Hello, welcome to in Nigeria and around the world to Business Point here on Global Television, your hub for topical discussions in the world of business, where we talk about tech, innovation, government policies, and business in general. I am Queen Agaba. Today, we turn our spotlight to a major infrastructure project that has captured national attention, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Just recently, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu commissioned the first phase of the highway, a 30-kilometer stretch from Victoria Island to Eleko in Lagos, marking a significant milestone in what is envisioned as a 750-kilometer expressway linking 9 coastal states. The project has been praised by the federal government as a game changer, one that promises to boost trade, improve coastal connectivity, and create jobs. But it has also not been without a controversy, from concerns about transparency in the procurement process to the displacement of businesses and communities and questions surrounding environmental impact. This project has ignited both hope and heated debate. I am joined by my guest, Dr. Wisdom Enang, who is a senior energy analyst and business consultant, who will talk to us about infrastructure development and help us unpack the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Many thanks for joining me on the program, Dr. Wisdom.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi, good morning, Queen. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you talk to us about, the strategic importance of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway in Nigeria's overall infrastructure plan?
Yeah, I think it's one of the strategic investments that should unlock trade. I mean, when you look at how the infrastructure that's required to facilitate trade, you're talking about movement of goods and services by road, by air, or by sea. So I think that is one of those areas that's going to further consolidate on the development of the various regions, allow the free flow of trade, very importantly. And I think even whilst in the construction phase, I think it will stimulate some sort of economic activity, because we would have local contractors being called upon to provide different services across. And so that's one of the ways you can really stimulate growth. Once you put in money into infrastructure development, you improve your infrastructure, but at the same time you also create wealth for the rest of the people around that area. So I think it's a very laudable project. My biggest concern, I think, with the project itself is we have enough funding so that it could be completed during the current administration, and more so, I think more importantly is who is going to be responsible for the maintenance of the road ultimately. So it crisscrosses across a number of states, and so is that going to be the federal government, or is there going to be a custody transfer to the states to say, when this goes bad, please maintain it for, because this is going through the segments of your own state. So I think that is very important, because not only are we going to be looking at the value at the construction phase, we're going to look at sustainable value from the utility phase, and how do we ensure that it's not just a road that then a few years down the line, when it starts breaking up because of different factors, we do not we have it an abandoned road. Or how do we ensure that when those issues come up at the issue, that we begin to tackle them from a more proactive standpoint? I think that's my biggest concern, and also ensuring that we can execute that job through the path of least resistance, because it's no gain saying you are chasing a potential in terms of benefits, but at the same time destroying businesses that you already have at the moment. I think that there are better ways we can navigate against that. Stakeholders, investments is very important to carry along existing business owners, the community, and the government, so that we can have a sustainable project that will add enormous value in the long term to the Nigerian economy.
And Section 1 has just been commissioned. We're told that the commissioning of Phase 1 was
Can you hear me? I cannot hear your volume.
Many thanks for staying with us. We still have Dr. Wisdom Enang on the line. Dr. Wisdom, are you there?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for staying tuned. The government says that the highway would contribute about $12 billion annually to Nigeria's GDP. For you, how realistic is this projection? And then are there sectors that are expected to benefit the most from this project?
Well, I mean, when you look at that, I think that figure speaks towards the fact that we'll be able to stimulate the manufacturing sector by way of having, access. At least they'll be creating access to the supply chain for the manufacturing sector. But you see, those numbers, right? Beneath those numbers are the realities that, I mean, for you to do that, you have to provide several other infrastructure. It's not just the road networks alone. Let's say power, for example, is one other critical one. So if we don't have power, if those guys are, producing power at a very high cost per unit kilowatt, then it's a problem. So it's not just creating the roads. I do agree that those roads will, facilitate, trade. But when you look at the real crux of the matter, when you look at what actually brings out the products that will be sent across the supply chain, the manufacturing sector needs a lot more than just the roads for them to be stimulated. Otherwise, we might not get to that potential. I believe we would get some potential, a significant one, but maybe not to the amounts that have been mentioned.
Thank you. Now, the project has faced criticism. While there have been applauds about, how good this project is, there have been talks about criticisms for demolitions and environmental concerns. Buildings that were demolished and all of that, and most of those people who, owners of businesses that were demolished for this project to see the light of day, have come out to say, you know what, there's not been compensation whatsoever regarding this demolition. What do you make of these issues?
I think the issue of demolishing buildings and businesses across the pathway of maybe a planned infrastructure is something that I think the government needs to take a more humane approach to, because there are several questions. This design, was it there ab initio, and of course, if it was there, was it made available to those who were perhaps looking at the planning for that particular area that they want to purchase the land? And if it was, then that's a different case. But there are some cases that I know that those guys go in to get the planning permission, they get the survey plan of that area, and it has no mention of this is what is planned, or this is government owned. And then a little bit later we find out that there was some sort of mistake or omission, but the land is actually government owned. So I think it needs to be looked at, because, as I said, one of the ways that we need to do things is to balance the exigencies of the future the priorities of the future with the exigencies of today. Because you do not want to impoverish people and then go on to execute a development project that may then eventually be abandoned. I think that's the biggest fear. I mean, we all know that there are, maybe sacrifices that has to be made if the government feels that, look, this is a pathway for construction and that was already earmarked. But then the truth is, was that communicated? Is there a compensation? And will that project eventually be realized, so that those that eventually pay that sacrifice of being maybe moved from that location or compensated will feel fulfilled? Because this is the thing. I would pray that this project gets into full 100% completion before the current administration completes their tenure.
Sense about argument and talks around the projects reflecting misplaced priorities, given that there are other pressing needs in the country, there's hardship, there's inflation, there's insecurity, and that this project is more or less like a misplaced priority. What's your take?
Well, for me, right, the way I look at the stuff is you have to balance CapEx expenses with OpEx expenses. So with CapEx expenses, you're talking about capital expenses on infrastructure. With operational expenses, you're talking about maybe putting stimulus out there, boosting salaries and all of that to make life to be better. But there's got to be a balance. There's no way, if you want to entirely inject stimulus or go on increased operational expenses, then it's going to at the end of the day, we may not have the infrastructure to drive growth. So I agree, critical infrastructure is very important, but more so, I like a self-sustained kind of project. Let me give you context. Now, if you go to places like the UK, most of those coastal highways, they have a toll system, because they're meant mostly for goods. They have a toll system that means that if they're commercial users, that they actually pay for it. There's a way they do it. What that means is that the road in itself can pay for itself over time. And so you can think about it not just as a misplaced priority because there's an opportunity cost in the immediate, but you can think about it that this is a venture that has an economic definition around it and is going to pay for itself. I think that's the thing the government needs to look at. How is it ultimately going to pay for itself? And of course, how are we going to address some of the opportunity costs surrounding, which is of course the foregone alternatives that could have been done with that money? How are we going to address it so that it doesn't ultimately become one of those tunnels where we just put public money and then it goes through in an unsustainable manner. So I think those are areas of the utility value that I was talking about but we need to really redefine our utility value so that it pays for itself and it becomes a sustainable thing and even pays for its future maintenance. We need to figure out a way because it's meant to facilitate trade and it's meant to do so in a sustainable manner.
You mentioned that tolling will begin by December 2025, but there have also been talks around even if the project is meant to facilitate trade, over time we've had issues of lack of proper implementation, and even with the tolling, people are talking about accessibility and affordability for Nigerians. How do you think that this would affect accessibility and affordability for Nigerians?
Okay, so for me, right, I always look at, if I look at the cost of anything, I'm looking at what is the cost of the alternative. And that's the way you put a value proposition. So you're making a coastal road and you're supposed to provide quicker transport by way of a good road. You're also supposed to facilitate logistics without the heightened cost of maintenance of vehicles. So if you put the right cost proposition out and say, look, this is what we're saving you on average with this road, and this is what the toll is. For there to be a significant value, the person who is going to be using that road or the business that is going to be applying that road must see that the cost savings that you're providing clearly outweighs the toll that you're putting forward. And that's really where you have to do your toll pricing properly. And when that value is there, like I said, you also have to take into consideration that there are private users who, may just be going to their business. So do we have enough trade activity to be able to pay for the road itself? Or how do we consider pricing for more private users? What is the dichotomy of the charges that we're going to be giving between the commercial users and the non-commercial users? A lot of this is going to define whether people take ownership of that particular project and feel that yes, I should contribute towards it, and so that ultimately it's not just to repay the project, it's to sustain the project, because I think we need to get to a point where there's a cost bucket that absorbs the maintenance cost of different infrastructure we build, because that brings us really to another issue which is very important, the idea of continuity. You have this project set up, and then maybe some money has to be earmarked from government coffers, and maybe due to exigencies of the time or due to a different philosophy of the administration in power, they just do not bother. And so that maintenance aspect suffers, and then ultimately the road becomes more hazardous than was intended in terms of utility value. So that is one thing I think we need to think about. How is this going to pay for itself? What's the right pricing? How do we make it fair for other users? A fair balance between commercial and private users. But this is all part of project planning, management execution, and even follow on, monitoring in the long term.
That monitoring as well as execution done to this project. But I'm just going to ask you this final question. In your view, what will the success of this project look like?
Very excellent question. I think the success of this project is going to be where we, consolidate the imperatives from other areas. So better power at affordable rates comes to meet a good road network. And then a really good road network comes to meet, the Nigeria First policy gains. For example, Nigeria First policy says we should promote consumption of Nigerian products starting from government procurement. So imagine if government is procuring and helping the manufacturers to produce, and the manufacturers are producing, and they're having cheap electricity costs, and that cheap electricity cost is then, further support. In addition to that, we have the aspect of a much better logistics network that allows you to get products on time, allows you to be able to plan, allows you to save cost on your maintenance of your vehicles and all of that. That is now what will give us a better unit cost on our production. That is what will allow us to be able to benefit from the economies of scale. That is exactly what will now allow us to get to a point where we maximize the output in terms of the utility value. And ultimately, Nigerians can get cheaper products, and even the road can pay for itself, and even the road can enjoy utility value so much so that it begins to justify such projects across the length and breadth of the country.
Dr. Wisdom Enang, Senior Energy Analyst and Business Consultant. Thank you for your contribution. You have a beautiful day ahead.
Thank you. God bless you. Enjoy your day.
Well, this is where we draw the curtains here on Business Point, looking at infrastructure development and the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway project. Don't forget that you can re-watch our broadcast by downloading the Global TV Nigeria mobile app for Android and iOS devices to also monitor some of our programs. And you can follow Global Television on all social media platforms using @Global TV NG and other handles now showing on your screen. You can also watch Global Television on DSTV channel 365, on StarTimes channel 276, and free to air on Nigecomsat. I'm Queen Agaba. Thank you for watching and see you again.